In this video, we'll be having a look at how to import and set up the data for the reconciliation program. To start with, let us have a quick look at some data which we would like to import in and set up. So here I have some bank transactions, and I also have some general ledger transactions for a particular period that I want to reconcile. So this is the data that I wish to import. So the first step that you must do is to go into the import setup area and export the format for the primary data. So once you export the format, remember to delete this comment on line 2, and you would paste your data from column D onwards below the heading. And then what you would do is you would copy in the transaction date, the description, and the amount for that transaction. These will be the primary data fields that you would use when it comes to reconciling. You would use these fields as additional fields when you need to be enabled the reconciliation to take place. So that is how you'd import the data. I shall show you an example of where the data has been set up once I've shown you how you'd go about importing the column headings. So the next step what you need to do is, for the secondary data, you want to bring in the column headings as well. So you'd export the format here, and as you can see, the format is pretty similar to the importing of the primary data. Again, remember to delete this column here, and you paste your column headings from data 1 onwards. So you paste just on the line 2, you paste the column headings. Now I will show you where this has been set up on an Excel sheet. Now if I navigate to here and I open both the primary data and the column headings, so you can have a look at how you go about setting it up. So as you can see, I have the data which is from D1 from D2 onwards, which is the data itself, and then I've copied the date. Now this is a date field. Let me just format that to a short date. So I've copied the dates from here and I pasted the dates over here. Similarly, I copied the descriptions and pasted them over here. When it comes to the amount, the bank statement has a debit and a credit entry. So I have treated the credit as a negative and the debit as a positive. I would recommend you keep the formula consistent month on month, and if you do that, then you don't need to change your setup as to what constitutes an item being reconciled. Now that is how you set up the data. The process is identical when it comes to setting up the secondary data. So I should close the primary data out, and when it comes to the column headings, you paste the column headings from data 1 again as to what the column headings are. So that is the process. It's pretty straightforward. Let me just double check the headings for the bank. If that looks alright. So that process is pretty straightforward. You do the same process when it comes to the secondary data as well. Now, after the data has been set up for both the primary and the secondary data in the format that's required to import it, you can go ahead and import it. So to import it, what you need to do is you click the import button here, and you navigate to the folder where it has been saved. So it's saved in here. So I would go and import in the primary data. That brings in the primary data. The next step is that you need to bring in the headings. So now I'm going to just change these headings slightly so that you can see how it imports it in, or that it has been imported. So I'm going to import the primary headings, and I navigate over to where it is, and I would select the headings. And as you can see, it has brought in the headings. Now I will run through the same process again for the secondary data. I will import the secondary data in. So secondary data, it's imported the data, it gives me a value and the number of transactions that have been imported as a check if you wish to go back and verify whether that has been imported correctly. Similarly, you bring in the secondary data headings. So navigate to the location and double clicking it to just get it to import the headings here. So it's brought in the headings here. Now the next step what you need to do is to set the field type over here. Now setting an incorrect field would mean it would appear incorrectly and you can view it from here. So for example, if I were to go and change, say for example, the amount field, the balance field, I change it to a date. And if I go and view it, as you can see the balance, it does show you a value, but it doesn't make any sense in terms of what those dates mean. It is not a date field, so you know that that hasn't been set up correctly. You just navigate back and you'll change it to being an amount in this instance. Similarly, you'll have a look at the columns and the data here. Now if I were to go and view the data here, and when I'm viewing the data here, I can see that the column is out of sync, the headings are out of sync, so which means I have not brought in the correct headings. And from what I can see, this will be the balance, this will be the amount, so it's out of sync by one item. This being the batch, that's the document reference. Input date, and it has the GL code here which has not appeared here, and that's why it's out of sync in the sense of I did not bring that in, I didn't set up the field headings correctly. So I'm going to correct that now without actually going back and re-importing it. You can do that, but I'm just going to show you another way where you can quickly fix this. So if you go back here, now I know that I'm out of sync by one, so I'm going to start moving these ones down just by copying and pasting it. So I'm just changing these up. I'm just moving them all just down by one step. And I'm going to put here GL account. Now if I go back, I can see that it is still out of order because I should have moved document date here and the GL should have been on that side. Let me just quickly fix that up. So that's the document date which needs to be here. And this one needs to be GL account. Go back and verify it and it's set up correctly. So that's how you go about setting up your data and verifying that you have set it up correctly. Now that you brought in the data correctly, you set the types correctly, you might want to change the field or the column width. Not very important, but when you go to do your rec, if you notice that the column width is insufficient, you can come and slightly increase it here so that it will show more data on that particular column for you when you're doing the reconciliation. Now the next step is to come and enter in the company name. Now if you're copying from one month to the next, you will not need to change that. You will also want to put in what this reconciliation is about. Now in this case it's a bank reconciliation, and I've also put in some account numbers to signify which accounts have been reconciled with this one bank reconciliation. You'll need an as at date so that you know up to what point you have actually reconciled the data. Then you'll need to enter in the source data. Where was the source data obtained? Now it has come from the bank statement. You'll need to put in an abbreviation and the closing balance of the primary data. Changing the closing balance of the primary data automatically calculates the closing balance of the secondary data. which means you need to verify that the closing balance is correct. If the closing balance isn't reconciling with the closing balance of the secondary data, what that means is that you have either not brought in all the transactions, or you have entered in the primary data incorrectly. Remember, when bringing in the transactions, any unreconciled items of the previous month needs to be included in this data set to be reconciled, so that the reconciliation is correctly moving on month. Again, here you'll have a description or the source from where the secondary data comes from, which is the general ledger, and an abbreviation there. You'll need to also set up what constitutes a reconciliation, whether it's a positive or a negative. It means it reconciles. Incidentally, positive and negative and positive has the same impact, so you can select it in either direction. It does not matter. Similarly, positive and negative has the same impact, so you can select which way you want to actually set it up. So let's have a look and see the data reconciliation. Now, as you can see, the bank statement brought in transaction worth 2.3 million, general ledger brought in a negative 800,000, meaning that there is items that would reconcile of 1.4. With the opening balance of 500 in the bank, that gives you a closing balance of approximately $1 million in the general ledger, meaning that in order to have that number of reconciling items based on the direction that has been set here. So if I close this and I were to change the direction to positive and positive, it means most of the transactions will not be able to reconcile. But let's have a look and see from here. And as you can see, it's basically none of the transactions are really reconciling in terms of the totals that are getting, and we are coming up with a ridiculous closing balance here. So this is one way you can identify if you have set this thing correctly. So if you have set it correctly, so I'm going to set it back to positive and negative in this instance, which sets the direction. Incidentally, importing new data, either primary or secondary, and or changing what constitutes an item being reconciled will unreconcile all previously reconciled items, which means you'll be starting to perform your reconciliation based on this setup which you have just changed to. So that's something to bear in mind, that changing any of the importing any new data in, or changing what constitutes a reconciliation will unreconcile what has previously been reconciled. So that is the process of actually bringing data and commencing your reconciliation. Incidentally, when you export the formats, they end up in the import folder ready to be imported in. And as you can see, that's where it is currently residing. I have created a separate folder here for this particular demonstration. So when you do the export, it goes, and it is in the same folder where your data file is. It creates an import folder next to your data file, and it would put in the import data put in the data which has been exported, where the format has been exported, so that they can be imported. That's it when it comes to setting up the data to perform your reconciliation. Thank you.